Welcome to head coach Scott Satterfield's off-season press conference. Coach starts off with a quick opening statement. Please raise your hands for questions. Coach?
All right, man. Hope everybody's doing good. We right now, as everybody knows, we're finishing up the recruiting season as far as coaches out on the road. Most all our guys are still out to finish up this week, ending on Friday. I've been out as well, so finishing all that. Our guys have been back now. This is the third week they're going on, and man, it's been a good start so far. Talking with Coach Nico and his staff. Really excited about the crew that we have. I think as everybody knows in college football nowadays, it's a little bit of a reset and a restart every year now, and we're not any different. I think this year, I think we have 28 guys that we're going to have new scholarship guys that are here this semester, including 15 transfers and 13 high school players that enrolled early, which seems to be a trend now that everybody is doing, coming in early, and which is great. We get to work with these freshmen. We get to see what they like, kind of easing them in, and then how quickly can we advance them. And obviously when you're looking at the transfer guys, there's certain needs that we had to go out and get. Not as many as we did last year, which was great. And I think we met most of, if not every single need that we had to meet. So, several of those guys are coming in here, all of them with great attitudes. All of them are working really hard. The thing that we've done is, last year kind of reset our culture, and was the one thing that was really strong for us. And the other thing that we've done is be able to retain the guys that we needed to retain off the last year's team, and I think that has been huge for us. Dante Corleone, man, what a great guy to be able to keep around here for another year. Guys like Joe Royer that had an opportunity to go to the NFL and decided to come back. Gavin Gerhardt, which is one of our best leaders on our team this year, will be a 3-time captain for us. And, those guys are leading like crazy right now on this football team to be able to keep those guys. And I think for us, it's always been kind of my formula. You got to recruit well. You got to recruit great players. You have to retain the great players, and that's never been more the case now in college football. And then obviously you have to develop these guys. And that's what we're doing. We're developing our young players. We're making them better. But we're also developing great players like Joe Royer, a guy who stayed because he wants to continue to develop. He recognizes that NFL, that's not a developmental league. You need to do all you can while you're in college to continue to develop, so when you get there, you're ready to go. So we're proud of our staff, our recruiting staff, and our coaches to be able to build this team to where we are right now. And now it's just a matter of putting a lot of work in and continue to take this program at some great heights. But as we start next week, all our coaches will be off the road. We'll be back. We'll be able to work with them, meet with them, and start doing a lot more football type things. And so that's exciting as well to be able to see them up close and personal. I'll open up with any questions.
Chad?
With the way college football is now, there's such incredible turnover when a coaching change happens. Does it feel like you're finally in a place where, like, there's a leveling? There's not as much. It's not as much of a roller coaster. It's more kind of linear now, point A to point B, without as many bumps in the road.
Yeah, well, for us, yeah, absolutely. This is. I've been here 2 years now, and then to start year 3 at this point, man, when you obviously feel a lot better. We certainly have continued in an upward trajectory. In a lot of aspects. Culturally, people throw that word around a lot, but that is so critical. It's in a way better place than it was. Obviously, the first year, we got better last year. We're going to get better this year by retaining so many of these guys. So many young guys that played last year, the most, we had that's played around here in a long time. To have all those guys back, now it's going to be a year under their belt. They're going to get a lot better as well. So that part is all exciting, man. We're really fired up about that. The other thing is that, I've been here 2 years. We have not had an indoor facility. We haven't had any practice facilities. We've been using everything at Nippert, and still having to go out and recruit these guys that are going out, and when they're visiting, man, we're competing against all these other Power 4 schools. They have they're having indoor, they have the nice things, and yet we're still able to get these guys to come play for us. So this new center that we're getting ready to build, that's going to be ready here in a few months, is game changer for us. It's going to level the playing field. You know, we're going to be able to be a much more connected football team day in and day out. And we've talked about that a ton, but that's so important to be able to have that connection. And so, yeah, I mean, we're obviously gaining it and still growing it to where we need to be extremely competitive in this Big 12. We know how it is. You know, every game's tough, and you have to do everything you can to figure out a way to give yourself an edge when you're going to play these games.
You've got a lot of new guys to talk about, but is there any one guy like last year was Gold Day? It's like, wow, how did we sneak this guy in? Is there anyone or several couple guys that are similar in that category?
I hope all of them. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, Gold Day is an awesome player and a great human being. You know, I think you mentioned Gold Day, but just because he was at a smaller school, you know, and didn't have a ton of notoriety coming in. You know, a guy that, you know, just right off the bat is Jeff Caldwell from Lindenwood. You know, I don't even know if I've really ever heard of Lindenwood, quite honestly. But when we watched him play, I was like, man, he's got some talent and got tremendous amount of length. So a guy like Jeff Caldwell could be a Goldie type player for us this year. You know, and we've only been here for a couple of weeks now, but I mean, he's a guy that is 6'5", extremely long arms, has really good hands, but also very athletic. I mean, he broad jumped over 11 feet this week. You know, and I think that's the top on the team. You know, anything over 10 is outstanding. He's at 11. So he's got an extreme vertical in 2 steps. He's eating up 10 yards. I mean, you know, so he's a different kind of player. And, you know, the other thing with him is, you know, being at Lindenwood, I mean, not really a knock on him, but coming in here with Coach Nico and his staff for the next 6 to 7 months and being able to put some great strength on his body to be able to get stronger when you're playing out here with the kind of guys we got to play against. So I think he'll certainly be a guy that will, you know, I think turn some heads, you know, coming from a small school. You know, but we're excited about all these guys. I mean, for sure, you know, Tyree Walker's a guy who's very productive. He's played at Nippert. He was at Oklahoma, you know, and came out here and played that day, and then went to Wisconsin last year and was very productive there, close to 900 yards rushing in the Big Ten. So, you know, ironically, he kind of really favors Corey Connor. I mean, quite honestly, when he came in on his visit, he was 221 pounds, you know, at about 5'9". So. Very similar to Corey. You know, he wants to get down. He wants to play around 215. So I think he'll probably end up being maybe a little heavier than Corey. A great pass protector, but he can run. He runs hard. You know, so I think he'll be very similar. You know, with that, and you know, so I'm excited about the running back room, getting Pryor back. I mean, who's one of the big play running backs throughout the country, and I think he could even have a more expanded role next year as well. Cyrus Allen's a guy. I mean, he can run. I mean, he can run. And so, you know, he's a guy who was a La Tech, and he went to A&M last year, started for them, and I think he could have a breakout year for him as well. Caleb Goody, I mean, you know, he was one of the fastest receivers last year in the country. I think he was 5th or 6th in the country, according to Catapult. You know, it was over 22 miles an hour, close to 23 miles an hour. We all know that we had to get faster out there at the wide receiver position. So now, you know, with Caldwell, you got some size, but then with Caleb Goody and Cyrus Allen, you got some speed. And then Noah Jennings, I think, is just a very solid football player. He's a punt return guy. You know, he's a guy that's very smart, and I think he'll be added to the mix, you know, along with like other guys like Tony Johnson, who had 6 touchdown catches last year. So I feel like our receiver room, we really helped ourselves there with some speed there. That's really what we want to go after.
Kind of continuing with the wide receivers, how much did Brendan recruit those guys along with the coaching staff, and how much was it like, I think this kid could do a lot for the offense?
Oh, Brendan was. If we didn't have Brendan, we'd probably not getting these guys. I mean, if you know, that's how important Brendan was in the recruitment of these wide receivers. I mean, I think as a wide receiver, you're not going to any school that you don't think can throw the football. You know, and so he obviously has a ton of arm talent. And he recruited these guys from his day one. As soon as we could get a hold of them and get them in here, he was recruiting them, calling them, talking to them. Obviously, when they were here, hanging out with them the whole time. You know, but again, we don't get them if we don't have, you know, Brendan's our quarterback and somebody that's you know, fully invested in trying to get the best receivers we can possibly get.
How important is Patrick Gerd? You got a tight end, not necessarily a Joe Royer type tight end, but a Francis Sherman type guy, and he's got a title and some experience.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, huge for him to get a national championship at Ohio State, and you know, he brings he's a lot bigger than Sherm. I think, you know, he's a 6'4", 6'4.5" guy that's close to 250 pounds. So he's also a big-time special teams player. He was on a lot of the teams there, special teams at Ohio State. And he'll just add that a guy on the edge of the offense that can provide some great blocking there. And he obviously there's a huge role for us on this team. It also enables Gavin and Zahersky and those guys to continue to develop and grow, because we think they're going to be outstanding tight ends as well. So we all know we like to use some of these tight ends, and and I think he's just going to be a great addition to our offense. And Joe Royer was huge in that recruitment, because obviously they played together, and and I think Joe obviously feels very comfortable here, and so just kind of tell him all about it. And so we were able to get him to slide down here and hopefully help us go compete for a Big 12 championship.
What do you want Sorsby to focus on this offseason, especially taking into account, his play down the stretch this year?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be more consistent. We all know that. I do think, we did play some better defenses during the last 5 games, with some more man-to-man stuff. We had struggles getting guys loose and free, and it obviously made Sorsby's job a little bit tougher. But I think more than anything, taking what they give us and not forcing it, man. The games where we got in trouble, we turned the ball over. We all know that, and we got to take care of the football. And but I do think another year in this offense, he'll be a lot more comfortable. But it's really just more consistency in his decision making. It's really what it comes down to. He's got the talent. He obviously can run. We got to utilize his legs more. I think that'll help open up some things in the passing game. But also, decision making is what it comes down to. And then I think it's a lot easier when you got a guy that can knock the top off. If defenses know you're not stretching the field vertically, then they're able to sit on a lot of things this way, and it makes those windows a lot tougher. So we got to do a much better job, coaching wise, stretching the field horizontally and vertically. We got to really open this field up. I felt like at times last year it was like we're playing on a volleyball court. And we got to we're playing on a football field, so we got to use the field. We got to use everything from sideline to sideline, as well as pushing the ball down the field. That's going to help open things up, and also it's going to help open things up for guys that can run. So you think about Pryor. When he gets a little bit of space, he can go. I just mentioned all these wideouts. Same thing with those guys. If they get some space, they're going to be able to make big plays. We got to do a better job, coaches-wise, to really open that up.
You lose your 2 outside safeties. It on paper, at least, looks like there's a bunch of numbers at the star. Do you look at seeing maybe how to spread some of that talent out?
Absolutely, yeah. We gotta be able to do that, and try to figure out who the best guys for the best positions. We do play with the 3 safety system, but we got to be able to find spots for those guys. A guy like Stokes, who's a outstanding player. We got to find a spot for him. Sanks was a freshman last year, but did some great things. I think the star spot for him is really good. Quade Sabor is a guy who I think could be an outstanding football player for us. And we got to find a way to get him on the field. Like, he's one of our most explosive players. And he's like a heat-seeking missile. So finding a way to put him on the field. We brought Harrison in, who's a guy who started games at Tennessee. I feel like, he can certainly help us. We just got to find the best spot for him at one of those, safety positions. Xavier Williams, a guy who led Middle Tennessee in tackling after playing quarterback, and he's a 6'2.5", 215-pound big safety. Feel like he may be in that boundary safety role. But, I think the thing we got some guys that are talented, Taden Barnes, another outstanding player. So, who I think has got a nose for the ball. So where are they best fit? And I think that's what spring practice is going to be about. Where do we find these guys to play? And but a guy like Kyle Stokes, maybe we may look at him at corner. I think he's a guy that's so athletic, got long arms. He's one of our fastest players on our team. Find a way to play him. All these guys that can play, we don't want them standing on the sideline. We want to be on that field.
You speak about the defense, obviously, there with Christian Harrison. Matthew McDoom was another big transfer there. What do you see from him in this defense, and talk about that process to get him here out to Coach Carolina?
Just early on, and we've only been on the field just a couple of times so far. But I mean, I've heard from other players like, man, he can really go. And I think, guys know who can run and who can't. And I think when they're making those comments, he really glides across the field. He's an outstanding player, was a first-team All-Sun Belt player. He also is a return guy, which obviously we need to get better in that respect as well. So excited about what he's going to bring to the table. He's a confident player. but he's got extreme speed, and I think that's something that we have to have at the corner position, because that's going to enable you to do a little bit some different things. You're not all the time having to drop 8. I feel like you can play a little bit more man, where you can bring some more pressure, so we can get some guys, some linebackers in the backfield. Although Bartlett did finish second in the league in sacks last year. I think some people say, well, we're not getting pressure. Well, he did finish number 2 in the league in sacks. Well, so I do think we can bring pressure. And I think if you have some guys that cover a little bit better, or we feel like we can play a little bit more man, okay, now it frees up some guys to be able to bring some pressure and maybe try to force some more turnovers. And I think that's going to be an emphasis this offseason defensively, is forcing turnovers.
So, you lost a lot of experience on the offensive line. Just talk about the guys you brought in, like freshman class, in the transfer portal, and how you feel they'll fit.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, man, I'm extremely proud of these those linemen, man. They're really making some noise right now in all-star games. They just got invited to the combine as well. So, John Williams is a guy that really wasn't on many NFL radars last season, the beginning of the season, but by the end of the season, he was on everybody's radar, and that's just to credit Coach Cardwell and Seth and those guys, and John working extremely hard. So I'm proud of those guys to be able to get that are getting noticed. We brought in Tyron Tayo is another guy from Ball State. We feel like that'll come in and start at a guard position. He's a guy who's played a ton of football at Ball State. Is a big, wide shoulder, a big 320-pound guy. I think he's going to be a really good player for us on the inside. A guy that has kind of turned heads this last couple of weeks is Nolan. Big tackle, man. He's about 6'7". He can run. He can bend. Extremely smart. He's done some really nice things there. I think one position maybe if we at the end of the spring that we need to look at is maybe potential offensive tackle. We'll see how the spring goes. We got probably about 5 guys that are competing for that, and we've told all of them, man, let's go out and try to get that job. So we'll see where we're at with that. But I do think Buford's had a great offseason coming back. Obviously, I talked about Gavin. We'll see. Tangenol is another guy who's played a lot for us last year, and I think he'll take another step forward this year, and I think he'll be a starter for us as well. I mean, he's an outstanding player, very strong, one of our strongest players on our team at the point of attack. So I feel like we'll be in good shape there up front. I think for us this offseason really just building out some depth.
You brought up speed with a lot of the transfers that you've gotten. Was that something that you noticed towards the back end of the season last year, that there was a difference in speed between you and your opponents, and was a clear emphasis?
Absolutely. Speed's the name of the game, and I think we've gotten faster. This will be our fastest team since I've been here, just overall, when you think about that, because it affects everything. It obviously affects offense and defense, but it affects special teams. And that's one emphasis for us this offseason is the teams. We got to get better, special team wise, but speed, playmaking ability. And your technique can be off a little bit, but if I'm fast enough, I can recover, when I'm thinking defensively. Offensively, obviously, if you can run by some DBs and linebackers, then you're going to make big plays, and I think that's the name of the game. So we certainly got faster at this team. We got more athletic again, and I think that's what you want to see, and that's where you want to trend to. When you think about special teams, obviously we got to get better there. Max Fletcher, will be our punter. Here's a guy who averaged right at 47 yards at Arkansas, one of the best punters in the country. We watched him all last fall. He can really punt it, and that's going to be critical for us. On our punt team, we got to be able to flip the field. We did not win the hidden yardage. Hidden yardage is, we calculate the special teams in the 4 core. We did not win that in the last half of the season. First half of the season, we were solid. Last half, we were not. That contributed to some of these losses, and we got to get better at the special teams aspect. But Max will be a guy that I think can do that for us. And then I mentioned several of these guys that are return guys, and that job's wide open in the punt return. I mean, that's got to be a huge emphasis there, being able to get some yards, steal some yards in punt return as well.
Speaking of special teams, do you have an update on who would be leading that group from a coaching perspective?
Well, Tim Connor's still on our staff here, and Tim's been with me for the last 4 years, and I think his role this spring will be increased. But we're gonna utilize our whole coaching staff in special teams. In the past, we have not done as much of that. I want all eyes on it. I don't want a guy in practice to slip under the cracks because we didn't have eyes on, say the left side of a punt team. Like, we got to have everybody, all eyes on it, and not let anything slip under the crack. We got to put the best guys on the field. I mean, it's great to be able to rest some guys, but, on our punt team, we need the best 11. We need the best 11 guys we can put on the punt team. That's how important it's going to be this spring. I mean, we're going to do all we can to emphasize our special teams and all hands on deck in the coaching staff. So, but Tim will kind of oversee that right this spring. We'll evaluate it at the end of the spring as we do everything, offense and defense, because that is certainly an area for improvement. We got to get better there.
Arizona State was picked for last, won the league, went to overtime in the playoffs. What does that say, if anything, about the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, it's very competitive, and everybody at least lost 2 games in the Big 12 last year, all the teams. So it's wide open, and I think so much of what happens in the fall is what's going on right now. I just mentioned we got 28 new players. Well, if you go look at every team in our conference, I promise you they're going to have close to that same number, if not more. And what is that chemistry going to look like? What kind of players did you bring in? What are you going to be doing to give your team an advantage? I mean, everybody does winter workouts. Everybody does spring practice. But what can you do to set your team apart? Those are the things that we're looking at right now. And and I know for us, we gained on it last year. Certainly wasn't good enough, but we did gain on it. And we mentioned that we beat Arizona State, and a team that won the whole thing. So we're right there. We added some good pieces to the puzzle here. We just got to have a great offseason. And I said this the other day, is that if you as a player go through this winter and you don't get better, then you let us down. You let yourself down, and you let this team down. And that has been the emphasis for this whole winter, is every single player, no matter how good you were last year, that doesn't matter. You got to get better this year and this winter. And so that is what we're focusing on. Every single coach needs to get better. Every player's got to get better. And if you're not, you let us down. And I think so far in these first 2.5 weeks, they've done that. They've worked hard. They've gotten better. We can track some things, as far as in the weight room goes. We got all these instruments and scientific studies and all this stuff that I didn't have when I played, We just went out and went hard. But we're actually tracking it, and we are way above where we were last year and the year before. So, tracking that stuff, we're in a good shape, but also, and it feels good. It feels different, and I think that's what you want. And now we'll see how much better we can get each and every day as we go through spring practice. But excited about this bunch that we got here. And I'm excited about the chip on everybody's shoulder right now. I mean, we're sitting here in January, but I mean, our guys have a chip on their shoulder to go out and play. We know we got Nebraska the first game on Thursday night. We're excited about that opportunity, and we're sitting here in January.
Have you ever coached someone with a parent who was an All-Pro in the NFL, like Christian Harrison?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. So yeah, I mean that's and you know what? And he made himself into a player. I did some research on him. He was a guy that went to a small school, FCS school, and ended up, you talking about a guy with a chip on his shoulder. He played that way too. And I think, Christian's got a lot of same attributes. He's a kind of a quiet player, works hard, played in big time games before. He's going to bring that confidence and. But he can do a lot of things. That's a good thing. He can cover, he can tackle. So I'm excited about him, being here and adding him to the mix on our defense. But no, it was pretty cool once we, got in touch with them and started talking with them and that type of thing. But no, he's an outstanding player, and hopefully we got some of those type players on our team that'll be those kind of players one day.
Any other questions for Coach?
I'll ask another. Travis Kelce's going back to another
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Any way to quantify what his constant mentioning of UC and wearing UC gear has done for the program?
No, I mean, I think it's awesome. I think, he's a guy who played here and he went through a lot. His story is very unique and interesting. And to his credit, he continued to build and grow. And, he didn't sulk. He just got better. And I think he's been doing that. Obviously he had his last year at Cincinnati was really, really good, but he's had a better NFL career. And that just proves that he's always tried to train with a chip on his shoulder and prove people wrong, prove the doubters wrong. And he's a great example for our players. And, and it's always great to be able to hear, somebody out there talking about Cincinnati and the Bearcats and how much it influenced and impacted his life. And that's what we're hoping to do with these players that we have now. And so, no, it's very cool. 2 players that will be playing in the Super Bowl for Cincinnati, next Sunday.
Thank you, Coach.
All right. Appreciate you guys.